This video's been sponsored by Bang Dream Girls Band Party. Stay tuned to hear more.
Yo, it's Austin, OG Clone Guy here, and I've decided about 2 years later to finally dive back in to Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know why.
We've been here before, Sonic the freaking Hedgehog. This quick-running, ring-slinging, girl-dodging, anthropomorphic absolute unit has been around for almost as long as I've been alive, and that's wild. That leaves us with nearly 30 years of games now, inspired by or trying to rip off everyone's favorite Fast Boy. Now, we've done this already, and you've seen some of the imitators, be it the dreadful Awesome Possum or the fantastic Freedom Planet. Sonic clones are all over the quality spectrum. When it comes to being a Sonic clone, I'm looking for primarily one thing. It's just gotta feel like the Sonic. Games where you build momentum with your speed, can possibly transform into a ball, can maybe bounce around real good like. Anthropomorphic-based speed platformers where you usually run right real good. At this point, I'm sure most of you already know about the onslaught of animal mascot video games that were thrown at us in the early and mid-90s, so there's no need to really go back into that. However, I've dug quite a bit to find another batch of Sonic-like games from not only back then, but recent times as well. I can't help but find myself attached to that little blue blur, even throughout all of his worst times.
You've really gone and done it this time, Eggman!
So today, we're gonna try out a few games that you might have played while on the search for something to fill that hedgehog-shaped void in your heart. But before we get started, let's talk about today's sponsor, Bang Dream Girls Band Party. The extremely popular free-to-play Japanese idol game made its way to the States earlier this year, and I'm in deep. It's not often I find myself hooked into mobile games, but something about Bang Dream really grabbed me. It's probably the fact that it's a rhythm game, probably the fact that it has a ton of really good music. We've got 5 different bands, each with a different style visually and sonically. Each band is made up of 5 different cute girls, bringing us to a total of 25 different characters. I really like the goofy Hello Happy World, but my number one pick is definitely Saya, the drummer of Poppin' Party. Cause, well, she's a drummer.
Hey Mom, who's your favorite girl?
Akko.
Nice one, Mom. If you want new outfits and different leveled girls, you can partake in the gacha in order to get you some new friends. On top of original songs, we've also got a ton of covers. Digimon's Butterfly, Silhouette from Naruto, or the meme-friendly Gurren no Yumiya from Attack on Titan. Although, I have to say playing Hikaru Nara from Your Lie in April is one of my faves. The rhythm game is probably my favorite of all the mobile ones, and I can't stop playing it. So hey, Bang Dream just passed 10 million downloads worldwide, so why don't you give it a shot as well? Check the link in the description to get started.
So why don't we get started with something from a long line of licensed games. We talked a little bit about Space Jam on the Combustibles last month, so why don't we talk a little bit about Tiny Toons Adventures?
I feel like the 90s were filled to the brim with Looney and Tiny Toons video games. Every console, every genre imaginable. Now, while I definitely watched and played a metric butt ton of these games, I easily watched even more of the show growing up. Something about Tiny Toons spoke to me a little more than the original Looney variety. Maybe it was my age, or maybe I just liked the cute character designs. Though, it was probably the theme song.
We're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony, and in this cartoony we're invading your TV.
While this Steven Spielberg-produced show would eventually end production to make way to focus on more Animaniacs, that didn't mean the end. Even though the show stopped in 1994, Tiny Toons merchandise would continue to sell for years, into the 2000s. In fact, a total of 18 video games would be made over an 11-year period. This shit was like the Guitar Hero or Assassin's Creed of the 90s. While there's a ton of games here, some I would really like to talk about someday, today I want to talk about the Sonic clone. For some people, 2 of these might be able to fit the bill, but I'm gonna go with just 1. While the show was still airing, Konami actually made a ton of these games, 2 of which are Buster Busts Loose and Buster's Hidden Treasure. While the SNES game has a lot of Sonic elements, it's Hidden Treasure that really takes the cake for me.
Buster's Hidden Treasures was one of my favorite Sega Genesis games growing up, and I don't really know why. Maybe it was that cheery 90s Konami music, or maybe it was the fact that Buster was like 2 shades away from being a Sonic. But I'm gonna say it was probably because it was one of the 3 video games I had, and I was still too dumb for Phantasy Star 4.
Buster's Hidden Treasure starts up with the classic theme song in its beepy and bloopy glory before I immediately notice something. This game doesn't have a proper title screen. It just says Tiny Toons Adventure. It's the same way with the splash screens, nothing about treasure hunting at all. This NES game, Buster Busts Loose, at least has the subtitle scribbled into the logo, but we got nothing here. All we've got are a few panels explaining the story. Buster Bunny finds himself a treasure map before Montana Max yoinks it away. I gotta say though, having the cheery-ass theme song play while the story explains that this creepy adult scientist, Dr. Gene Splicer, brainwashed a lot of Buster's friends, it's kind of unsettling, but whatever. It's off to save my friends, and I guess probably the fate of, why did they brainwash children to kidnap other children? They already have the treasure map. Is it weird, or is that just me? But yeah, Sonicness. As one would expect, Buster is all about gaining momentum and utilizing blast processing, probably, in order to make your way through levels as fast as you can. It seems like Konami actually took a lot from the first two Hedgehog games too, because there's a nice emphasis on platforming here, even if sometimes it's infuriating. Let's be real though, this game looks really solid for the Genesis. Buster looks nice, bright, and large on the screen. The backgrounds are actually pretty detailed and are nice to look at as well. Certain sequences really stand out too, such as the bonus levels that have a very avant-garde Picasso style to them, or hell, getting launched into space. You'd be hard-pressed to have a difficult time navigating through the levels even when they get more complex. It's the platformer theme park variety show that we all know so well, so get cozy. Besides running real fast like, Buster gets the ability to jump off of walls as well as summon a guardian force for assistance. And that's it. Sure, Buster's moveset might be limited, but hey, simplicity is always good design, even if it's maybe a bit too easy. Buster's health is a little stock of hearts that can be increased by finding these little bells hidden in levels. However, if you die, your total heart counter resets to 3, so that kinda sucks. Remember when I said this was easy like 2 seconds ago? Well, yeah, it's that way for half the game before Buster decides to pull a Yui and drive us straight into the depths of hell. So like, listen. Instant kill death spikes aren't uncommon in games. However, this many spikes is just too much. While this adventure starts off swimmingly, all of the boss fights kind of sit around the same level of difficulty. All you gotta do is jump on Dr. Gene's head a few times while dodging relatively easy to dodge projectiles from your brainwashed friends. I don't think I lost a single one of these encounters. However, the ice level? Why? Getting this little rabbit to move is already a little difficult because of the way the momentum physics work, but pairing that with ice physics is like, yeah, okay, bye. I'm good. The last two worlds are essentially death traps that are designed only to increase the playtime of what is maybe an hour-long game. It's not bad by any means, it just has that old-school challenge that will test your patience. I like to feel in control, and a lot of Sonic games will give you that chance with spikes only draining rings and making situations that you can recover from. However, when Buster decides to just kill you instantaneously despite having a health meter, it's a bit aggravating. I know a lot of people feel that Buster Busts Loose is also very Sonic-like, but I didn't play that one growing up, so whatever. Though maybe I'll check it out next time because Tiny Toons just feels cozy. Also, Acme All-Stars is the shit.
So yeah, Buster's Hidden Treasure is frustrating, but it's alright. So why don't we move on from a licensed game to a weird import? Have you ever heard of Action Pachi? Pachi?
I feel like it's pretty rare to run across an old school Japanese video game developer that had literally 0 American releases. And back in the day, as long as a game wasn't like too foreign looking, it would find its way to the States. But this wasn't the case for developer C-Lab, responsible for some of the, for a back of letter term, Japanese-ass games back in the 90s. I can imagine it would be hard to get yourself published in the good old red, white, and blue when you got like a Super Famicom game that's a parody of Saint Seiya. That's actually a Mahjong game. Or how about Love Quest? It's a turn-based girl-wooing RPG where you literally fight the ladies with conversation. Guess not. Though, I mean, if anyone wants to translate this or like tutor me in Japanese for a couple years, like, hit me up. One of the games C-Lab would make on the Super Famicom was this little cute looking thing called Action Pachi. Despite looking like a discount Pac-Man with his yellow joints, he sure isn't anything like the Pac. In fact, Pachi here, I'm assuming that's his name, I can't read Japanese, is something different. While he might be pulling a Kool-Aid Man on the box art, you might be surprised to find out that this thing is actually a Pachi slot ball. Yeah, you know, pachinko, the one thing that's like totally super huge in America. Some of you might know it as a gambling addiction, others might know it as the thing that Metal Gear Solid became. If you're a video game, you're destined to become a Pachi slot machine at some point. So it makes sense that a Sonic-like platformer based on pachinko wouldn't make its way to the States. Just like how our Burger King games never made a big splash in Japan. It just makes sense. As far as the game goes though, it's hard to say. We've got a lot of Sonic-y things here, such as speed building similarly, hitting things only in the bouncy ball shape, and even rolling around to move faster. You don't have a currency-based life system like in Sonic, but just a health bar. But figuring out what's gonna do damage to you is a bit tough. So Pachi can switch between standing and ball mode by just tapping down. In ball mode, he can move faster but can't jump. So in order to keep any momentum, you have to switch between the two forms and it feels hella janky. You're supposed to jump into the air and then press down in order to ball up and hit dudes, but that not only A, kills your momentum, but B, doesn't seem like it's guaranteed to do damage to them at all. In fact, it just seems like I'm gonna be the one taking damage most of the time, regardless of what angle I approach it. Or sometimes you can just lay successfully around its feet, like totally fine. Okay. Even the bosses are really confusing. They all show up randomly and have that whole Robotnik shtick to them. You have to jump on them in ball mode and then use their balls to bounce. But it only seems to work like 20% of the time. It's really confusing and frankly frustrating to the point of wanting to turn it off. Not to mention, 3 levels into the game, there's a water level that reduces your speed across the board, so it's like, yeah, okay, bye-bye. To be real though, if we're looking at Action Pachio here, I'm not even sure if it's Pachinko's fault. Let's say, hypothetically, that Pachio was something loved by all Americans. Say something like, I don't know, bowling? Everyone's bowled, probably. I did, I was pretty sick.
Who do you think you are? I am!
But even if Pachio was a bowling ball with feet, the game would still suck. Action Pachio, while interesting and definitely reeking of Sonic cloneness, is just a weird import that should probably remain in the video game graveyard. Just like that C-Lab Pingu game.
Have you ever found yourself at like 4 a.m., fully slumped in front of your computer, the lights piercing right through your eyes as you click through whatever random BS you find? Well, I've done that, as you can probably assume, and that's how I found Kid Chaos.
The Commodore Amiga is such an enigma to me. At least in America, especially where I grew up, it was all about the Apple II or the super accessible Windows 95. Home computers had a brief stint of popularity in the 80s and early 90s, but were phased out for gaming purposes by the more easily manageable video game consoles. However, as we've talked about in various videos across the channel, the Amiga had an insane amount of games produced for it. Even if some of them are Ferngully, the computerized coloring book. Hell yeah! Similarly to the Great Gianna Sisters that we talked about in the Mario Clones video, the Amiga was sure to hold a clone of whatever was hugely popular at the time. Now remember, a clone doesn't necessarily mean a game is bad, it's just very clearly ripping off the source material. However, I don't really think that applies for Kid Chaos. This character design though? This half-zipped, apple-eating, pudgy-cheeked, unibrow-sporting, single-hoop earring-donning, caveman, club-wielding looking motherfucker? I strongly dislike everything about this design. You might not look at this and think Sonic, but what if I show you this? Yeah, I know, right? Like, damn! I guess it makes even more sense, considering that this wasn't the original design the team at Magnetic Fields wanted to go with. Andrew Morris, the original artist behind Kid Chaos, wanted to make this our main character under the name Cosmic Kitten. Is this the first Sonic OC? But yeah, instead of that, we got a weird-looking caveman student guy who looks like the younger version of General Chaos.
But how does it play? It sure does.
This is a classic Amiga game, so you have to be very patient as it takes a very long time to load from the 4 floppy disks. In fact, only the intro and the first level are on the first floppy, so you'll be switching them out in no time. I'd make fun of this, but honestly, this makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. You spoiled kids and your fancy-ass 3D rendered HD graphics, QuickTime events, dual stick analog bullshit control. Oh, sorry, I was reading this YouTube comment I got yesterday. My bad. Everything you see on screen is approximately 30 times more difficult to control than it looks. Kid Chaos builds a dumb amount of momentum, and if you're going fast, even if you yoink back on the control stick, you're not gonna stop. If you need to make some precise movements, well then, good luck. I was upset at this and wrote that the controls were stiffer than me in my notes, so take that as you will. Health works on a system almost Sonic-esque. Upon taking damage, Kid loses a frick ton of health, which is seen in the bottom corner. You can regain it by collecting food you find throughout the maps, which is either all over the place or nowhere to be seen. It's very random. So you get to the end of the first level and the door is shut. Guess what? You're not done. You have to, quote, cause more damage. What does that mean? As Kid Chaos, you have to spin your stupid face and club around and destroy random things. This isn't a prominent thing shown by the game design. I feel like it was arbitrarily decided to make this Sonic clone one of those go everywhere and break everything type of games in order to extend the playtime. There might have been something in the instruction manual, but I don't have that shit. But it doesn't end there. A lot of the missions in Kid Chaos have some pretty different structures, which is actually kind of cool. Sometimes it's your classic get to the end type of dealio. Sometimes you have to explore and smash, and other times you're shooting at barrels in the sky. However, some of these missions are complete and utter bullshit. In a case of let's make this game really hard, sometimes you're asked to do something entirely ridiculous. For example, one of those missions gives you 1 minute and 30 seconds to get to the end, with no checkpoints. Now listen, I'm all for a challenge, but this is just way too much. You can increase the amount of time you get with these time power-ups, but that doesn't mean jack shit when all of the ground is covered in saw blades. Considering 9 out of 10 jumps in this game are done in blind faith, I can only imagine what they wanted the player to do. Eventually, as you're running through this hellscape, you stop getting access to health power-ups, but the saws don't stop coming, and the time's running out, and it's very stressful. Don't recommend. Kid Chaos seems to know it's kind of bullshit too, considering one of the level descriptions literally says, quote, a confusing and puzzling level where you have to visit virtually everywhere. You idiot. I'm very lucky to have had a Sega Genesis growing up, because I never had to play Kid Chaos as an alternative, and whoo, am I grateful for that. Even if Sonic's made me like 27% furry.
They fall for me every time.
Okay, no more old things. Let's talk about something new-ish and shiny. An indie game a lot of you guys have been telling me to play. A game that combines elements from Sonic and all kinds of other classics. You know, I'm talking about Spark the Electric Jester.
The previous Sonic Clones video came out before Spark was released. However, that didn't stop you guys from making the comment section all about how I ignored it. But hey, I listened and decided to take a good look into it. Spark the Electric Jester is a Kickstarter-based project made by Lake Feppard, a Brazilian game developer who gained a lot of notoriety for his Sonic fan games, Chrono Adventure, and Sonic After the sequel. So it makes sense that someone who was involved in the Sonic community would make a game that I'm calling a Sonic clone. However, after being released for the PC in April of 2017, it would quickly come to my attention that Spark took the concept of Sonic and ran with it so much further than the Blue Blur has. Yeah, I'm saying that with Sonic Mania in mind too. Sonic Mania is amazing, but like, damn, Spark the Electric Jester has some ideas, man. Let's start with the opening. It's simple, showing the planet surrounded by a giant halo-looking thing. An electronic percussion-heavy intro track starts to set the stage as Spark the Electric Jester being a fast-paced and energetic game. So, we open with a situation all too familiar. Spark, the Electric Jester, has been laid off. His job of being an electric jester, I guess, was deemed obsolete, and he was replaced by a robot named Fark. So in response to this, Spark decides the only thing that he can go do is kick his employer and replacement's ass. I mean, like, really, it's pretty simple and dumb, but I enjoy it. Whenever you look at the screen, you might get flashbacks to Sonic, or hell, Freedom Planet, because, well, I mean, just look at it. Spark, however, decides to go a little further and embrace a Nintendo franchise called Kirby for the other half of the game. Yeah, you know it. Spark has these power-ups he can pick up throughout the map that completely change his moveset. Rather than rely on jumping and spin dashing through enemies, Spark straight up gets a plethora of weapons that he can use. You start out with basically nothing, but quickly get a hold of things like bows, the ability to use magic, fire-breathing breath, and all kinds of stuff. Each one has a chargeable attack and a normal melee, so you're able to progress with whatever feels the most comfy. There's also my personal favorites, Wind and Edgy. Wind gives Sparky a moveset similar to Sonic, allowing him to actually spin dash as well as be generally more floaty. Edgy basically turns Sparky into a hybrid of Sasuke and Shadow the Hedgehog, unlocking the limits of his Keki Genkai in order to go bonkers.
Believe it!
Oh, also, you get to hold on to 2 at a time, switching between them with a simple press of a button. It's pretty awesome to pull off crazy maneuvers by switching on the fly. While that may seem complex, Lake Furperd seems to be a strong believer in keeping things simple. The story, the controls, the progression, it's all straightforward and accessible. The amount of paths Spark is able to take in each level makes it all easy to swallow. That, combined with the different movement types, means you're gonna have a great time. Bosses are memorable, levels are fun, and let's not forget about the soundtrack. Composed by Michael Staple, the OST for Spark the Electric Jester hits a level of variety and jamminess that I haven't felt in a hot minute. The entire time I played through the game, I was bobbing my head, and you can't say that for everything. Beyond just Spark, you also have other stories to experience, such as Fark. The amount of content here is crazy, especially for a Kickstarter budget of just $9,000. I think it's obvious at this point that Spark the Electric Jester comes with a glowing recommendation from me. If you're into that good old Sonic-y, running fast, speedy gameplay shit, then you're gonna have a good time. Not to mention that for the value you pay, it's got a pretty alright length to it. The dialogue isn't incredible, but it's sure to get a chuckle out of you occasionally if you're into, dad jokes. Like you should be. If I had to complain about anything though, it's mostly with PC optimization. Tinkering with resolutions and general PC settings can be a bit of a butt, but it's okay. Also, for some reason, anytime I would pause, the recording would freeze momentarily. Beyond that, I would say that it's a little easy, which is something it has in common with its inspirations. If you're wanting a tough challenge, you're gonna have to look elsewhere, like, I don't know, Mega Man X5? But if you want something that's a colorful, aesthetically pleasing throwback filled with good times, then Spark the Electric Jester is pretty alright.
So there you have it, more Sonic clones. As a fan of the Blue Hedgehog, I'm always looking for more clones and things to cover on the channel just because it, sparks my interest. Did not mean to make that pun. Damn. I would love to know if there's any games that I missed or you think I should talk about in the future because there's always room for more clone videos on this channel. Unless it's Bubsy. Fuck Bubsy.
Thanks for watching. Shout out to all my Patreon supporters for your prolonged support. Y'all are the best. Sorry for the gap in videos there. I had a few things come up with stuff you'll see soon, but you should be seeing a few more later this week. Check out the Patreon or get a channel membership, which is a new thing you can do if you want to help us out. Catch you next time, you goobs.